Hello and welcome to the P3 Power Boost podcast, where we tackle real issues with real business women in real time. We're excited because today we have a special guest, Mr. Anthony Goins, who is a longtime friend of mine, but really an amazing business leader. So I'm excited for you to meet Tony Goins. Tony.
Hi, Lisa.
Oh my goodness. It's great to sit and talk with you.
I know.
It's been a long time since we had a chance to sit down and chat.
Yep.
So tell me what's been happening since we last spoke. I think we had an opportunity to work together in 2014, I believe.
Yeah. During my time at Cabela's.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what's been happening since then?
Well, we sold Cabela's. We sold the bank to Capital One, which was a successful transaction. And I stayed on the transition team for a period of time. And then I rolled off that transition team. And not long after, then Governor Pete Ricketts called and asked me to join his cabinet. So I'd never done anything political before, but this was a position to lead the Nebraska economy.
Right.
Which there's some, as a banker, there are some parallels to economics and being a banker. So it wasn't that far of a stretch. But so I joined Pete Ricketts, became a cabinet member. And let me see, he asked me to join in July of 2019. I started that position in October of 2019. And then in early 2020, we know what happened. COVID hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
So
you've been up to some amazing things then, Tony. I mean, since we last talked, we're going to get into some of that, but I want the audience to know a little bit more about who you are. Because as you were talking about your role and starting to get into some of the details, I thought they really need to know who Tony is.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I know that you're going to share some of those things, but I want to give them an inside look. So I'm just going to read just a little bit about you.
Okay.
So you guys know who this guy is. Okay.
All right.
So I have it here, Anthony, but we call you Tony.
Correct.
Tony Goins is a senior financial service operations executive with over 30 years of experience leading global operations, customer development, and regulatory engagement activities for publicly traded, family-owned, and privately held enterprises. He's held a variety of C-suite and operational leadership roles in B2C industries, including automotive, student lending, payments, online retail, and large and medium-sized retail banks. Tony's business expertise is centered around optimizing corporate operations, enterprise risk management, and international business expansion. And you just mentioned that you recently served as the state of Nebraska's Director of Economic Development, where he drove over $8 billion.
Yeah.
That's pretty big, Tony.
Yeah.
$8 billion of investment, created more than 7,000 jobs, and achieved the nation's #1 ranking in COVID-19 pandemic recovery by news outlet Politico. I can also go on. You were previously the senior domestic and international operation and customer engagement roles, or you were in those roles for J.P. Morgan Chase, Auto and Student Lending Division, USAA, American Express, and Ford Motor Credit Company. And let's not leave out your Aggie. Did some undergraduate studies there at North Carolina A&T, and so we share that in common.
We do.
And last and most importantly, I believe, married to the beautiful Kimberly.
Yes.
Who's here with us today, supporting
right.
Tony. And you have some four kids?
4 children.
Four children.
They're
and
grown
then
though, they're not children.
6, right. Oh my goodness.
How crazy is that?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And 6 grandchildren.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably the greatest role of all, right?
Without question.
Without a doubt.
Without question.
Without a doubt.
That's right.
So you mentioned being the economic development there in the state of Nebraska.
Sure.
But you and I met at American Express.
We did. We did.
We're not going to say how many years ago.
It was a long time ago.
We're not going to tell everybody that.
We can say. It was in the 80s, man. We were a little call center reps,
Oh, right.
man.
We were.
Talking to customers.
I know, right?
How cool was that, man?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And what a great place to start.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I mean,
career.
I think it really set our values and our goals and our foundation. You know, we had a chance to see, you know, other successful executives. You know, you had Malcolm Mitchell, you
Yes.
had Mike Collins,
Yes.
you had Janice Bell Anderson.
Yes.
You know, and we were sitting on the phone, we're just taking our calls. But at the end of the day, it was really strengthening our analytical abilities
Absolutely.
because we had to make decisions
Yes.
right then. And if you denied a charge, you got cursed out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
You know,
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that?
Yes. Yes.
And we had to manage that drama
Yes, we did. And
because a lot of times at the point of sale, it wasn't automatic approval at the point of sale like it is now.
That's
you know,
right.
the authorization department doesn't even exist anymore.
Right, really. Yeah, which is crazy.
Technology. Yeah.
But look, to your point, look at the skills that it aided us in building
Absolutely.
to be where we are.
That's right.
And so that's a great point. What did you think as young Tony on the phone during that time? What did you think your career would look like if you could go back to that moment? What do you think?
Lisa, that's a good question, man. Let me say this. I thank God every day.
Yeah.
I never saw this. I did not. I never saw, you know, the levels that I've been able to achieve. When all I cared about when I was on that phone was I gonna get a paycheck?
Right.
I needed to pay my bills. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
That's all I really cared about. You know, I can say that at a certain point, you know, as I was watching Terry Chenault walk in the building every day, and you know, he had his own elevator to his office, right? I used to thought that was really cool. Like, how this guy got his own elevator,
Right,
you know?
yeah.
And what is he doing up there? I remember the first time I went up there in the little executive area. Remember, it was all blocked off. You couldn't get in there. Like,
all glass, and you're looking through it.
you're looking through like, what are they doing back there?
What are they doing in there?
Yeah. So I remember the first time I was able to go back there. I had to do a little presentation. Neil Feldbaum took me back there. And I was looking at all those offices, and I said, that's when the light switch hit. I said, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to be in one of these offices one day.
Wow.
And I think from that point, I started to say, you know, I started to really talk about what are the skill sets that I needed to add to my portfolio.
Sure.
Because I knew at that point in time, I wanted to, I said I want to be a center head.
Right.
You know,
right.
I wanted to do what Terry Chenault was doing.
Sure. So you had a vision.
I did after I saw it.
Right.
And that's why I always say right now, you know, exposure is really important for young people. You have to let them see something, because if you can see something, then you can envision you can be something.
Absolutely.
And if they don't see it,
Right.
you know, they tend to be in whatever their environment is. That's what they see.
Absolutely.
And me having a chance, Neil Feldbaum took me behind that glass. I had to do a little presentation. And I remember I got my little suit, you know, what I could afford then, and my little shoes. And I went behind that glass, boy, and I saw that. I said, oh, yeah.
Oh, this now it's possibility.
Now it's possible.
Oh, I love that. You know, and so representation does matter.
It does.
So once you determined, I love that, because similarly, I walked out of revolving doors, to your point, with all of this experience, not really even realizing the experience at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and started a business, and they invited me back to speak.
Yeah.
And
that's
you just
a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And you know, you were just talking about you and I on the phone.
Yeah.
As taking calls.
Taking calls.
And then I go back in the center, and they have these, you know, posters. Lisa Thomas is coming to speak to the women and all this stuff. And I realized the true foundation that we had garnered by being there at that time. So hats off to American Express for setting the stage for us.
Absolutely.
So after you left American Express, what did you do? Where did you go after that?
Well, you know, 9 years at American Express, and I ended up as I led what was called the operations area, where we did the load leveling for the phone calls.
Yes.
Myself and William Parker worked in that area.
Yes.
Yep. And then I got a call from Malcolm one day.
Oh, okay.
And Malcolm was at QVC, and he asked me what was I doing, and I shared with him. He says, why don't you ride down here and spend a little time with me? So I drove down to Chesapeake, Virginia.
Yes.
And I walked in this large campus, and I walked in the front door, and there's a receptionist there, and she says, may I help you? And I said, I'm here to see Malcolm Mitchell. She says, do you have an appointment with Mr. Mitchell? I said, well, yes, ma'am, I do have an appointment with Mr. Mitchell. She said, hold on for a minute. So she called upstairs. She says, Mr. Mitchell, there's Anthony Goins downstairs here to see you. And you remember Malcolm, 6'7".
Oh yeah, he's tall. Very
Malcolm
tall.
walks down and he greets me with that loud radio voice that he had, and it was just amazing. And so he walked me around the entire campus, and it was huge. And we went in his office, and his huge office, and I said, Malcolm, man, you lead this whole thing? I said, who do you report to? He said, well, my boss is in Philadelphia.
Wow.
I said, so you're the center here. You're like the Terry Chenault equivalent.
Right.
He said, yeah.
Wow.
And he looked at me, he says, I want you to come here and work for me.
Love that.
And I was blown away because, it was Malcolm that gave me my first opportunity to leave the security desk. When I started at American Express, I was a security guard.
Yes.
So the front desk checking badges.
Yes.
And Malcolm used to come in every day, and I had my security guard uniform on, but my shoes were always polished.
Sure.
And my uniform was intact.
Yes.
And one day Malcolm said to me, he says, listen, he said, you think you can do anything else other than check badges here? And I said, Malcolm, I'm making $6 and a penny an hour and unloading trucks at night.
Sure.
If you give me the opportunity, I think I can do it. So he allowed me to come upstairs, and I shadowed a senior credit authorizer, took very copious notes. I went in Malcolm's office after 2 hours and I regurgitated to him exactly what the job was and what it entailed. And this guy took a chance on me, Lisa. He went down to human resources. He said, I'm going to hire a security guard as a credit authorizer.
Love it.
And she went ballistic. She says he doesn't have any of the credentials. He doesn't meet any of the qualifications. And Malcolm said, there's something special about this kid, and I'm going to take a chance on him. And he did.
Wow.
This guy took 2 chances on me, so he gave me that. He afforded me that opportunity.
Yes.
And then when he went to QVC, I asked him what he wanted me to do, and he said he wanted me to lead his order entry department. And I said, well, how many people is that? What does that entail? It's about 700 people. I said, Malcolm, 700 people? I said, I got 15 people right now, 700. He said, don't worry about it, you can do the job.
He believed in you too.
He did.
Right.
He did. This guy literally changed my entire trajectory in terms of my life.
Yeah.
Because he believed in me.
Well, you're highlighting a couple of different things though, Tony, that I think is critically important for those listening and watching.
Sure.
One is the relationship.
That's right.
Right? Relationships
Absolutely.
matter.
Relationships matter.
One of the things that you talk about, and I strongly believe as well.
Absolutely.
Relationships matter. But you also threw yourself in. You said you took copious notes. So you were intentional.
Very intentional.
About developing yourself.
Yes.
And then I would imagine you executed.
Oh, execution.
Right?
Yeah.
So those
you have to get things done.
Have to get things done.
You do.
So yeah, I think all of those things are critical when you have a vision.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right? It's the relationships. Are you gonna really be a student?
That's right.
Right? And then are you gonna execute?
Are you gonna execute?
And then Malcolm saw that.
He did.
Right?
He did.
And so I think we want to acknowledge him, and Malcolm is incredible leader. I admire him so well.
That's
much
right.
like yourself. But I also hear what you had to take into consideration. You built that relationship. You actually created an opportunity to educate yourself. You took the initiative, and someone saw that in you.
Absolutely.
And so after then working with Malcolm, go from working with a few people to 700.
700 people, yeah. Yeah. It was a big leap.
That was a big leap.
It was a big leap.
That was a big leap. So what were some of the challenges you had to face inside of that new role?
Well, I needed to learn the business itself. Yeah. Because it was QVC, so it was a little different from banking and financial services and cards. So, for me, the first thing I needed to do, I needed to build relationships within the organization. Okay. And Sue Wilkerson was who I reported to. This was a black woman who, to this day, I've never been. She made me who I am in terms of her coaching. Oh, wow. Sue Wilkerson was just an incredible. She used to be a basketball coach. She came out of Indianapolis. She had a number of undefeated seasons. So Malcolm made me report to Sue.
Oh, wow.
He did, because he knew that Sue would give me the level of coaching that I needed. And so Sue Wilkerson said to me, she says, the way I'm going to measure your success is in 30 days when I walk around and talk to these 700 people. I'm going to ask them, do they know who Tony Goins is? And if they say yes, then you're successful. They say no, then you fail.
Wow, that's great.
That was what she said to me.
Wow.
So the first 30 days I spent building relationships with all of those people, you know.
Yes.
I did small little round tables, town hall meetings, one-on-ones.
Yes.
And I got a chance to learn my staff, learn the people. And through that, I also learned the business, and I learned what was going well and what some of the opportunities were.
Yes.
And it really gave me a chance to really just grow. Wow. Sue used to say, inefficiencies equal opportunities. Are you up for the challenge?
I love that. Right.
That was a Sue Wilkerson statement.
Right.
Inefficiencies, because everybody can complain.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
But Sue would say an inefficiency equals an opportunity.
Wow.
You just have to determine whether you are up for the challenge or not.
Well, I love that, because she's exactly right. If
is.
there is an opportunity for you to make that inefficiency more effective and bring some of your expertise, some of your education, some of your leadership,
that's right,
and all of that to the table.
That's right.
Amazing.
That's right.
Well, we're going to take just a short break.
Okay.
That relationship continues to come up as a common theme for you.
Absolutely.
Tony. And I know that's a part of the heart of who you are.
Yes,
and
indeed.
So when we come back from the break, let's talk a little bit about the importance of relationships.
We'll do business. That. Absolutely.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this segment of the P3 Power Boost podcast, where we discuss real issues for real businesswomen in real time. What you are about to hear is the internal dialogue of other businesswomen like you. Check it out.
Okay, what was my affirmation again? Stay focused, stay focused. But you have a big meeting today. You know good and well you're not really ready for it. You're going to have to face this guy. I mean, I know he's been difficult, and I know that he's challenging. He's your COO. He's a leader. He's not performing. But how do you lead in a way that will move the needle forward? Okay, that's right. I'm supposed to be saying affirmations. I am powerful. I am extraordinary. I am one of a kind. I mean, Jesus, it's going to be a tough day. This internal chatter that many bossy business women face is what we address within the P3 Group's program, LEAP. We create a strategic plan. We support your leadership team in coaching and educating them on being extraordinary leaders. But what about you as the CEO who's challenged by the team, by the growth of the company, by the change that you're going through, as well as the financials? This and all that women face is what we address within the LEAP program. Join us at leap.thep3group.com.
And we're back with Mr. Tony Goins on the P3 Power Boost podcast. Tony, we were just talking about relationships earlier. And I was asking the question during the break, how is it that you ended up going from a corporate leader to working in with the state of Nebraska? How did that happen?
Relationship.
Yeah.
So let me share this story. When I joined Nebraska as the chief operating officer for the world's foremost bank, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and Cabela's had never really had a Veterans Day ceremony. And so I volunteered to organize a Veterans Day ceremony for the entire company.
Okay.
So it would have been an audience of about 2,000 people. And normally when you do those ceremonies, you need a keynote speaker.
Right.
So I reached out to the governor's office. I didn't know the governor. At the time, I hate to admit it, but I didn't even know who the governor of Nebraska was. I did a Google search at Pete Ricketts, and I just called the Capitol and I asked, would Governor Ricketts be willing to come be the keynote speaker for the Veterans Day ceremony. And the handler said, how many people? I said, about 2,000. Well, you know, politicians, that's
Right.
a pretty big audience.
Yeah.
And so he said yes. So 9 a.m. Veterans Day 2014, Pete Ricketts shows up with his entourage, and he and I engage on small talk. And I remember I asked him, I said, Governor, do you enjoy cigars? He says, no, my father enjoys cigars every day. He says, now me, he says, I have a really, really good scotch every day after I get home. And I said, well, what's your favorite scotch? He said, well, normally I'll have an Oban 14, but when there's a special occasion, I'll have an Oban 18. So I put that in my little catalog.
Right.
And of course, the governor came and he did a phenomenal job. No notes, just a great job with his talk. And afterwards, I made a phone call. I was able to get a bottle of Oban 18. I got a handwritten thank you note that I put together. I found some really nice cigars because he mentioned his father enjoyed cigars.
Yes.
I did a note to his dad, and I drove to the state capitol and I dropped off the Oban 14, Oban 18 handwritten thank you note, thanking the governor for coming to do the speaking engagement, cigars, and another note to his dad. Before I made it back to my office, excuse me, I got a call from his handler. Says, Governor Pete Ricketts can't believe that you took the time to do a handwritten thank you note and bring him a bottle of Oban 18.
Yes.
And he wants to know what you're doing this evening.
Wow.
I said, well, whatever the governor wants me to do.
Right, exactly.
He wants you to meet him at the governor's mansion this evening. He just wants to spend some time with you.
Wow.
And he says, do you know Tim Clare? I said, absolutely, I know Tim Clare. He says, we're going to call Tim Clare and have Tim Clare join you. So that evening, I went to the governor's mansion, and he had decanted the bottle of Oban 18. And I walked in, and we sat down, and I knew his story. You know, his family, his father founded TD Ameritrade.
Sure.
They owned the Chicago Cubs, so he was a billionaire family. But he was very kind, he was very humble, and for 2.5 hours, there was not one word about politics.
Wow.
It was all about our faith, our family,
Sure.
our beliefs.
Sure.
I asked him a lot of questions about TD Ameritrade because his father made him go work at Union Pacific first before he came into the family business, and then he worked his way up to become the chief operating officer and the chief marketing officer. So we talked about business, and that was the conversation for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And that's how the relationship with the governor started, not knowing that 6 years later he would call me and ask me to join his cabinet.
But wow.
Yeah.
I mean, incredible story, and the power of relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we take those relationships for granted, right?
For sure.
But I think the most important thing too that you talked about is your initiative to how do I really build this rapport and how do I serve, which is also one of your pillars, I say, of success, right? For you.
Yeah.
How do I serve in a way that would make an impact? And I don't even know if that was the intent really. It was more so service. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, for me, Lisa, I value the time that a person gives me, because time is something that you can't get back.
That's true. Yeah.
And so when I wrote on that note, I said, Governor, I just want to thank you for the time that you afforded me and our organization to come speak. And he did such a great job, you know. And the bottle of Oban 18 was a touch because it's something that he valued.
Right.
And so I wasn't doing it. You know, one of my Tonyisms is build relationships, but build relationships without the expectation of something in return.
Yes.
So I wasn't expecting anything in return from him.
Right.
But what I do believe is that when you are intentional about building relationships for the right reason,
Yes.
then at the end of the day, God will bring it back to you.
Absolutely.
I do believe that.
Absolutely.
And I've
Absolutely.
lived that. I've lived that world.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's one of the areas of a person that has a growth mindset,
Yeah.
really, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
someone that's in the space of growth is also in a space of giving, I
That's
believe.
right. Absolutely.
And so, and look what it afforded you years
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
right? And so tell us more. You started this when we began our talk
Sure.
about your impact on the state of Nebraska. Let's
Yeah.
hear about that from the relationship.
Yes.
Let's look at what that caused.
Yes. Well, you know, let me say this. I had a really great team. the state of Nebraska. I mean, those young men and women and the team that I inherited from Dave Rippey. It was a really, really solid team. You know, for me, it's all about what do you do to come in and build relationships with the team and put the infrastructure in place that allows you to execute. You know, and how do you really measure success? I often talk about a balanced scorecard, and I think that every leader should have a balanced scorecard.
Sure.
Because it allows you to track the work that you're doing, and it allows you to measure the execution,
Yes.
and it holds you on task.
Sure.
And so that was one of the tentacles that I installed when I joined the state. But, you know, $8 billion worth of economic development. And that was really predicated, large portion of that was international. So we had great relationships with the country of Germany, South Korea, Japan, Africa, specifically Kenya. My relationship with now President William Ruto. I hosted him in Nebraska, and so there was a lot of economic development specific to the international markets. Bogota, Colombia, Quito, Ecuador. We did a phenomenal trip to the Middle East where we spent time in Qatar, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the country of Jordan. Had a chance to meet the King of Jordan, King Abdullah III.
Wow.
And so building those international relationships is a large driver in what you saw in that $8 billion, because people do business with people they trust,
Yes.
people they like,
Yes.
and people that they know will actually absolutely deliver.
That's right.
And those countries saw that in the state of Nebraska, and they saw that. And it was really an honor to work beside Governor Pete Ricketts, because when we were at the negotiating table, it's funny, we never rehearsed anything, but Pete would always lead, and I would sit beside him, and I could really just add to his words that would really create a situation where we would close the deal.
Wow.
And it was
great.
pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
certainly want to talk a little more about negotiations later.
Sure.
I do wonder, given you built the relationship with the governor,
Sure.
right?
Who's now U.S. Senator Ricketts now.
Right, senator now.
Yeah. Mhm.
Didn't know him
Didn't know him.
initially.
No.
Made a call
Yeah.
for him to come speak
That's right.
inside of a vision to make a difference in the community.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
It was a win-win situation. He wanted to come and speak probably to that community.
He did.
And then he called you some years later to sit in this seat.
He did. That's what happened.
Tell me the opportunities, and I use that word loosely,
Sure.
opportunities that you began to see for yourself in growth
Sure.
by taking that journey inside of that relationship.
Lisa, I would say the opportunities that I started to see were, I'm going to use the conversation about the international expansion.
Yes.
Because I had international experience at JP Morgan Chase, but it was mainly in Asia. And so that was Manila, Cebu, and India. But the opportunities that I was afforded when I led the state were much broader from an international perspective. I never envisioned being able to travel to the number of countries and sit down with country leaders, politicians, and country business people and have conversations about negotiations,
Sure.
about export and import and partnerships specific to technology and trade. That was a new world for me. And, quite frankly, Lisa, I had to learn it very quickly.
Really?
I did.
Really?
Preparation, which is one of my Tonyisms, really centers around your ability to be able to study deeply to learn your trade.
Gotcha.
Study deeply to learn your trade. And because it was something I'd never done before, the preparation, I couldn't go to another country
All right.
and sit down with the number one and number two person. In Vietnam. When I was
Sure.
in Vietnam, I spent time with the governor of the Binh Dinh province. You got 64, 66 provinces in Vietnam. And those governors report to the president, to the prime minister. And so when you are playing at that level, the preparation for those types of sessions is pretty intense.
Sure. Well, to your point, right? Because I do believe, and we talk about with our clients as well as some of our partners, the limitation and that wall. You can hit a
Sure.
wall,
Yes, you can.
particularly when you're growing outside of an area that you have expertise in.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing you say is preparation.
Preparation.
Was a big key in that.
Absolutely.
And the more you prepare, the more you educate yourself, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Then the more you're able to go through those walls.
Well, what I say is the preparation helps to create a higher level of confidence.
That's right.
And it becomes the lever to mitigate the risk of failure. More you prepare, and you really got to be serious about it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
it's preparation on what you're going to say. It's understanding the markets that you're going to be in.
Yes.
You mentioned negotiations. It's understanding the levers of negotiations.
Yes.
It's understanding, what conversation do you need to have to create a mutually beneficial outcome.
Yes.
Because negotiations is really about, how do I make sure that the other person wins?
Yes.
And how do I make sure that I win?
Yes.
And when you work towards a mutually beneficial outcome, then the negotiations tend to go a lot
out.
better. They
Love it.
tend to work out. Yeah.
Let's talk about that when we come back.
Sure.
Right? We're going to take another break. So if it's working out for both parties,
Yes.
not one or the other.
That's right.
But both,
That's right.
it works out.
That's right.
And I think the thing that's really critical for the businesswoman is sometimes she will surrender her power to the negotiation and will not get what she wants. So let's talk about how you do that when we come back.
Okay. Outstanding.
We'll be back in just a bit.
Scaling your business requires innovation sometimes. You have to learn to color outside of the lines. It means you have to take a leap into unfamiliar territory. So, many businesses, just like yours, are taking the leap. Join us so you can leap into profits.
Leap.thep3group.com. And we're back with Mr. Tony Goins, and we are talking about negotiations.
Yes,
Tony.
indeed.
So the thing that's really challenging, I think, for business women, and we work with them now over 20 years as well, right?
Yes.
But one of the challenges I see them face is being in those two places that you talked about.
Yeah.
How is it that you're going to win and I'm going to win?
Absolutely.
So most of these business women, sometimes they acquiesce and they just say, I'll just have to take whatever I can.
Wow.
And that's not the language they say, but that's what happens.
That's the action.
They give up,
They give up. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how does one really begin to arm themselves with the tools to negotiate where there's a win-win situation?
Well, I think the first thing they have to be able to do is to understand the value of their firm. And they have to go through the math so that they truly understand their valuation.
Sure.
And the valuation, has to be a logical valuation.
Yes.
And so that being the case, they should spend time with people that understand how to do real valuations. Because if your valuation is logical, if it makes sense, then the value of your firm is irrefutable. So I think that's number one.
Yes.
I think number two, which is really synonymous with number one, is the strength of their financials.
Yes.
So they've got to have a very strong balance sheet,
Yes.
understand their cash flow statement and
Yes.
that P&L.
Yes.
But that balance sheet becomes really important to the valuation. And the balance sheet needs to be what Jamie Dimon used to call it, a fortress balance sheet.
Yes.
So your valuation becomes stronger when you have enough cash to be able to withstand any type of risk that may come about.
Yes.
So those first two things. And then the third part of that is, whatever the business is, understand your consumer market and understand how much market share you have. All of that feeds into your valuation.
Sure.
So if that data, those numbers are irrefutable, and Pam, can I say Pam?
Sure.
And Pam has done what is necessary to make sure that she understands her valuation. She has extremely strong financials. She understands how much market share she has.
Yes.
And exactly how she is going to continue to grow that market share. She knows her customer.
Yes.
And she's built relationships in the industry. That would be number 4.
Yes.
Then she can stand strong on her negotiation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no way that she cannot really. There has to be a win-win situation inside of that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because she now understands her value.
That's right.
The thing that you talked about, and maybe we'll have you back and talk about this, Tony.
Okay.
The power of the balance sheet.
Power of the balance sheet.
There's equity. There's all those components of that balance sheet that's important. Say just a little bit about that, if you will.
Well, you really, the power of the balance sheet, the lever that I talk about is the cash to be able to withstand shocks in the system.
Yes.
When you think about economics, what Jamie would always say, when I use the term Jamie Dimon, because he's the epitome of a businessman for me. And one of the reasons that I joined JP Morgan Chase was the opportunity to sit in a room with a business leader like that. I'm going to digress for a minute because I have a sign in my business that says sit with winners because the conversation is different.
Yes.
# relationships matter.
Yes.
And I knew that if I were able to sit in the room with a Jamie Dimon, a Frank Bizignano, or Charlie Scharf, Scott Powell, Ryan McInerney, that within itself would help me elevate my mindset.
Yes.
And Jamie would talk about during the financial crisis, we knew that JP Morgan Chase was going to be fine because we had a fortress balance sheet.
Yes.
We didn't need to hand out money from the government.
Yep.
We weren't, some of these other financial institutions that needed to be infused with capital to be able to stand. We had a fortress balance sheet. So what I say, if you're a small entrepreneur, regardless, you have to make sure that you have a fortress balance sheet. And a part of that is not just your assets and your liabilities, but it's enough cash to be able to withstand a storm that could potentially come through.
Absolutely.
And you have to assess the risk.
Absolutely.
So what are your top 5 risks? What's the likelihood of that risk occurring? And if it did occur, what would the impact be?
Yes.
And how would you mitigate that risk?
Yes.
Cash mitigates a lot of risk.
Yes, for sure.
When you got money, you can mitigate a whole lot of risk.
That's right.
And so a lot of these small businesses, when they run thin on cash, then they put themselves in a situation that could cause something to become very catastrophic for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for highlighting that, because that is one of the areas, as I mentioned, that the small business enterprise fails.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's right.
Because they're just...
Or access to capital.
Or access. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Because you've got to have the proper cash to move that needle forward.
That's right.
So that's great. So you highlighted those things in terms of negotiation.
Sure.
What would you say if Pam, and I'll just share a little bit about Pam, we call our avatar Pam. Our potential client is Pam. So when you hear us talk about Pam, she's right in alignment with the P's. Her name is Pam.
That's really cool.
So how would Pam begin to take all of the things that we've said today, right, and apply it in her business? If you were to summarize that, how would you? What
I would say is, and I get back to what I call my 5 Tonyisms. Number 1 is preparation. Do not walk into any scenario or situation unless you're prepared. And so what does preparation mean? Preparation means intense studying, and I think for me, if I'm allowed, preparation really starts with my faith.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, to me, the greatest book on the planet is the Bible.
Yes.
And so preparation in terms of your faith and your mindset.
Yes.
Preparation in terms of studying your market. For me, that's the Wall Street Journal. That's the Bible of business.
Yes.
CNBC, Fox Business.
Yes.
I mean, you looking at your markets, and throughout the day, in the markets that I'm in, I'm getting emails and I'm getting nuggets of information that I'm retaining, because for me, the preparation is about the conversation that I'm able to have. And sometimes I got to switch dimes. I might be talking about the economy in China, or I may be talking about, the economy in Taiwan, or I may be talking about the economy in the Middle East. And at the end of the day, I have to be able to switch gears.
Right.
I can't switch gears if I'm not prepared to be able to do so.
Sure.
So preparation is number 1.
Gotcha.
Number 2 is don't be afraid to take the hard assignments. Don't be afraid to take the hard assignments. You know, the toughest assignments are the assignments that will really give you the greatest level of learning.
Sure.
Because you take the easy assignments, where you gonna learn? You take those easy assignments.
Right.
You're not
Right.
gonna learn anything. Easy street. Take the tough assignment. You take that really tough assignment. It's going to stretch you. It's going to stretch your mind. It's going to stretch you in terms of helping you to learn something else. You learn what you're made of when you take those tough assignments. I always say it's easy to be a leader when things are going well.
That's right.
Everybody wants to be out front when things are going well.
Absolutely.
You find out what you're made of during tough times, and those tough assignments will help stretch you.
Sure.
Number 3 is build relationships.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what we have is a relationship.
That's
We
right.
sat beside each other on the phones,
That's
taking
right.
calls.
That's right.
And through the grace of God, we're sitting here now and with a higher level of influence. And then you have to cultivate those relationships, but you do so without the intent on receiving anything in return.
Yes.
You do so because the value of those relationships, and you treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be afraid, you know, and sometimes through those relationships, bad things are going to happen. People are going to be ugly to you, but you're not afraid to forgive very quickly and continue to move forward.
Sure.
But those relationships become very important.
Yes.
Number 4 is you give back to your community. You give back to your church. Your community is service.
Sure.
Because what I really believe, Lisa, is that when you have a heart of service, a servant heart, servant leadership,
Yes.
then good things happen around you.
Yes. Yes.
You have to realize that there are people that are less fortunate than you are.
Yes.
And you know, Lisa, I don't forget the times when it was really hard for me to pay my bills.
Sure.
I do not forget those times. I do not forget the time that my truck was repossessed. I don't forget those times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there are always people that are less fortunate. You never look down on people. And so service to people, service to your church, to your family, it's just important. And then Tonyism number 5 is be optimistic.
Yes.
No matter what the situation, what the scenario is, I often subscribe to the Stockdale paradox. What Admiral Stockdale said was, in spite of the brutal facts of this negative situation that we're in, we're going to remain optimistic.
Fantastic.
And
Yes.
so being optimistic always wins. You wake up with an attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
If you can put your feet on the ground,
Yes.
and God gives you breath in your body,
Yes.
no matter what you're going through, you still have an opportunity to make a difference.
Yes.
And if you always walk with that attitude of gratitude, you know, social media, it's always going to be negative stuff happening,
Oh, yeah.
stuff in your family. Sit on top of it and just have an attitude of gratitude. And I believe if you do those 5 things very consistently, then good things will happen.
Absolutely. Well, those are great tips. I hope Pam was listening and taking copious notes, because this was an educational opportunity for Pam.
Thank
So,
you.
Tony, I appreciate you. I admired your journey.
Thank you.
And our friendship. While we don't talk often, I'm always one of your biggest fans.
And I'm always one of your biggest fans.
So, Tony,
That's right.
thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this show.
Thank you.
Pam and all the other listeners, one of the things we say here at the P3 Group is that you build with strategy and lead with heart. You build with strategy and lead with heart. Tony is the epitome of that. And so I think if you listen to this over and over again, there will be more opportunities for you to develop, grow, and expand. And we're here to leap with you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.